Hello and welcome to the third season of Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle. A lot of changes, hopefully all for the positive. One thing that's the same is my voice. I hope you all don't mind. I'm Chris Pike, sometimes known as the never was, but the man beside me, he's the has-been, but he's quite a has-been. You'll recognise the name. All I have to do is say that he's a six-time NBL champion, six-time best defensive player. His name's on the Best Defensive Player Award. Damian Martin joins us. We've got plenty of exciting news as we head towards NBL 22. Let's get right into it. Damian Martin, thanks for joining me.
No, my pleasure. Looking forward to a big season. I've enjoyed the pre-season action so far. And those of you who think I've kicked Shawn Redhage out of the hot seat, he's still a part of the show. He's a busy man, old Shawny, running his own clinics and whatnot. So I'll take on this part of the segment, this part of the show. But no, Shawny will still be a big part of it going forward regardless.
Let's get right to that, Damo. Let me knuckle down on that a little bit. If we go back probably 9 years, you took the captaincy off Shawn.
Oh, here we go.
You ended your career winning more championships than Shawn. You've replaced him pretty much full time as the man doing the commentary out of RAC Arena.
He's still roaming the sidelines.
And now I started this show up with Shawn 3 years ago. It was a big project we undertook. We were very proud of it, and now you've taken his seat here on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle as well.
Look, I like to think he warms up the seat and then I come and jump in. No, Shawn's been fantastic. Actually, even before the first game I did do some courtside commentary for, I called him and asked for advice, and he was fantastic. So you'll see him courtside for the Wildcats' first game Friday week on the 3rd of December, and then I'll be there on the Sunday. So it's still nice to go alternate games with Shawny, and I still get his feedback after most games and see where I can improve.
The big change we've had to make on the show is that we can no longer be called the scoring machine.
Yeah.
There was a time last year you wanted to claim that title, but it's just not going to work, is it?
No, it would make no sense whatsoever. Talk about being confusing, saying and listening to the scoring machine and then hearing my voice. I'll try and give as little offensive feedback about other opposition, about the teams as possible. So yeah, we've had to change the name of the show.
We have. That's why I guess we've gone for the never was. That's well and truly my claim to fame. I've been an NBL writer for 15 years now. I've known you for a long time, but it's not much of a claim to fame compared to what you achieved in your career, Damo. As I said off the top, 6 times NBL champion, 6 times best defensive player. You're an Olympian. Being serious for a second, now that you've had time to reflect on your career properly, you've been retired for 18 months. Are you pretty proud of what you did achieve?
Yeah, and it's more so who I did it alongside. It's funny, when you retire, or even during the latter stages of my career, I realised it's not what you do, it's who you do it with. And that goes back to the days of mum and dad, hours and hours on end in the car, the sacrifices my siblings made because while dad was driving me an hour and a half each way, Tuesdays and Thursdays to Newcastle, and then up to 3.5 hours to Sydney on a weekend. It essentially meant he was working from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m, jumping in the car, doing those hours during the weekday, but also meant my 4 siblings didn't get to see their dad. You know, I barely got to see my siblings, and mum was a single mother of 4 for 2, 3, 4 days a week. And so that's when you realise as you get older, 1, I didn't say thank you enough. You just take it for granted that that's what parents are supposed to do. And then 2, the sacrifices mum, dad, my siblings made. So the best moment I ever had in all of my sporting career was when I got to call my dad and mum, put him on FaceTime and say I'd made the Olympic team, and their reaction is one that'll stick with me forever. And that's why you do these things, and that's why I'm forever an advocate of team sport, because the mateships you develop, the championships you're trying to win, it means nothing if you're not surrounded with good people and those you love from a young age.
Every time you mention the Olympics, I'm reminded of what I did to you ahead of the London Olympics, and we'll share that story in full one at some point this year. But being serious for a second more, you talk about your family over in Gloucester, where most of them still are. How tough has it been the last 24 months, where I think you've only been able to see them once?
Seen them once. So mum and dad there from Sydney originally moved up to Gloucester. And they said they'd be there for 5 years and then go back to Sydney, open up a law firm. Dad's a lawyer, and go from there. And there's not much to do in Gloucester. It's a small country town, dairy farming community, and they end up having 5 kids in the next 6 years. And 40 odd years later, they still call it home. While all the children have packed up and moved to 2 in Sydney, 1 on the Central Coast of New South Wales, eldest brother up in Brisbane. I'm the one out west. We've all got children of our own, bar my youngest brother. It means that mum and dad haven't seen grandkids. Which has just absolutely destroyed them. Up until recently, they all went up on the weekend now that borders have opened up to regional areas. But Gloucester in itself, it's gone through its worst drought in history. Literally had to bring in water from out of town into its worst floods. Yeah. So it's seen the extremes. So it's battled every single person there. A lot of people went broke at one stage, couldn't help themselves financially with the weather, a lot of the farmers in particular, into the biggest floods. And the cattle started to come back and record prices with the cattle. But underlying all of that, and more importantly, was just haven't been able to visit family. Yeah. So we've taken it for granted out west what COVID has been and what it is, in particular in New South Wales, Sydney, Melbourne, Victoria. It's been a very tough couple of years. I can't wait to be able to get home, see mum and dad, my siblings, and more importantly, have my children be a part of my grandparents, uncles and aunts and cousins, because it's it hurts the soul, and I've only seen it from a small part compared to mum and dad.
Now, I've got some big plans this year for Hoop 7's basketball hustle, and I'll get to those shortly. But before we do, Damo, Wildcats fans would be holding their breath thinking that now that you've retired, your injury days and your accident days are over. But as we talk right now, you've got a few fractures in your face, which is going to horrify some of those Red Army fans. So
I thought I'll never have to visit a surgeon again. I barely even walk upstairs these days. So a few weeks ago, I was woken at 4:30 a.m. to my 5-year-old needing to go to the bathroom. My wife asked if I could take her, so I did. And I woke up, felt fine, but by the time she was doing a wee, I started to get a little bit lightheaded. And then I need to go to the bathroom, so I told Maggie to go back to bed. And as I was weeing, sorry to everyone visualising this now, I thought, I don't feel good at all. And I must have stumbled a few steps because I didn't fall on the bathroom tiles, thank goodness. Stumbled a few steps, fainted, did the perfect plank, did not protect my face whatsoever, and then fainted on the ground, and then the head knock to the flooring in my bedroom knocked me out cold. So woke up and went and saw the doctor a few days later. I was a bit stubborn, didn't want to go to the doctors the next couple of days, saying everything will be okay. On Monday I woke up and said, all right, with how puffy my cheeks are, I can barely talk, it hurts to eat. And yeah, it turns out I do have two fractures in my cheekbones, just above my lip and in my jaw. So when I went and saw the same facial surgeon that dealt with my broken jaws, courtesy of Brian Conklin, he said, mate, I never thought I'd see you again, but I think deep down he was delighted because I paid for a few of his Christmas presents over the years. And as I sit here today, still got 4 facial fractures. I thought sport was dangerous. Turns out I'm a 37-year-old in a 7-year-old man's body because as the doctors explained it, your low blood pressure happens naturally, but normally it doesn't happen till you're about 70 where you start fainting if you stand up to wee. So I have to sit down to pee now, mate. I retired and I'm that guy now.
And if anyone knows why you're not playing basketball at any level, that probably explains it.
It's sad but true. I play against my work colleague occasionally. I think the highest level of basketball he played was high school basketball in Canada, and about D3 here in Willerton. So it's nice for the ego to get a couple of wins one-on-one playing him a couple of days a week.
Yeah, it's amazing. And speaking of Brian Conklin, is he a potential guest on the show at any point?
Yeah, I'm happy to call up Conklin and see what he's been up to, see what injuries he's inflicted. So, no, we might reach out to him. It's a shame that there's no longer the Townsville Crocs, but we'll get his thoughts on what he's doing post-NBL and what he remembers from his days out here.
Yeah, it was an interesting time. I was doing some work for the Crocs at the time when they sacked him as captain and as their import. And I remember getting the call from one of the staff members at the club saying, we've got to put this media release together. We've just told Brian that he's been sacked, and SD was the coach at the time, Sean Dennis, and I called him up and he said, because I had to get some quotes for him, and I said, look, we're doing the announcement from the club, and SD said, look, I really don't want to give you any quotes because I had nothing to do with this decision. The board called me up and said they've sacked him, and
you're kidding.
I didn't want him gone. I wanted to keep him.
You'd be furious as a coach if that was happening behind the scenes without your input.
And it was just unbelievable. So we've got some stories to cover with Brian if we do give him a call at some stage. But
even Sean Dennis, he's over in Japan doing some great things.
Fantastic. We spoke to him on the first season of this show, and it was a fantastic chat with him from over in Japan. But yeah, I mean, ironically, that was the start of Mitch Norton's captaincy in the NBL too. So it's amazing.
Yeah, one of the youngest captains I think we've seen. Well, going back to SD, he's over there. Look at the Japanese contingent of Aussies right now. In the Japanese league, you got Nick Kay just killing it over there at the moment. Reece Vague's putting up big numbers, and Angus Brandt is an MVP candidate at the moment. So it's great to see some former Wildcats and NBL players.
And coaching-wise, Andre Lamanis is over there coaching. Paulie Hanari's over there coaching. And when a couple of clubs reached out to Paulie last year to see if he was interested in filling the coaching vacancies, which we had in Brisbane, we had in Cairns, we had in
Adelaide.
We ended up having in Adelaide. Paulie just said a flat out no. I'm way too happy in Japan, and this is where I want to stay. And SD's changed clubs this season over in Japan, but he's more than happy to stay in Japan, and he wasn't interested in taking offers from back home either. So he must be doing something right over there.
The man that helped him get the job, and I know we're getting a little sidetracked here, and I can't think of his name, Mike, I want to say, but the old Newcastle Falcons coach was coaching in Japan.
Yep.
Great guy. I can remember him pacing up and down the sidelines as a Falcons fan myself. And got him SD an assistant coaching job over there, 6, 7, 8 years ago now. And great things for SD, good man. And it's wonderful to see him doing so well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let's get on track a little bit, Damo. We've got some big plans. Obviously, we'll be the co-host of this show, but we decided we wanted to have some regular guests. So sometimes when you talk to current players, or even coaches, they're very guarded on what they say. But we've decided to go down the other path, and we're going to rotate one of these men between each show starting next week. And I don't know if we could get four better names. We've got Shawn Redhage, Alex Loughton, Rob Beveridge, Adam Gibson. Both of us have got a history with all four of them. We've talked about Shawn already, but he will, in all seriousness, he will be involved in this show still. He's going to not only join us once a month, but he's still going to be giving his Player of the Year award voting because he doesn't want to let that go. And he's still going to compete on the Tab Touch preview, trying to raise some money for charity with Matty Knight because he loves to compete.
He put some research into it as well. He does take that seriously.
He will take himself seriously. And it'll be great to still catch up with the old scoring machine. Alex Loughton's another one who I don't know if you ever got to play with.
Yeah, we played on an Australian team together. Yep. I love Alex. He was a great player, hell of a bloke, plenty of laughs. So it's I was over the moon when he said he'd join us on the show.
Me too, because the last 2 years I've done the Cairns Taipans podcast that we started up with him. He lovingly dubbed it the Pike and Lau show, which I was never that comfortable with. I didn't really want my name part of it, but that was a lot of fun. So I've got to know Alex a lot, probably over the last 7 or 8 years, once he's been up in Cairns. And Rob Beveridge is a man that I'm delighted to have him involved in some form, talking NBL basketball. I don't know how much basketball we'll end up talking once we get him on the line, because who knows where the conversation will go. But he's moving back to Perth soon. He's still coaching over in New Zealand, and he's still living out of Wollongong, which is an interesting mix. But
that man spent more time in quarantine than anyone else I know.
I think he said 52 days last time I spoke to him.
Hotel quarantine, that is, just all these trips. So you're exactly right. It'd be good to have Bevo on the show. He was like a second dad, a mentor, a mate. So not only am I over the moon that he's moving back west eventually, whenever he gets out here at some stage, but it'd be good to have him joining on the show because he will speak openly and honestly and share his thoughts about players, coaches, teams, where the league's at. So he will have a lot to say. And
Adam Gibson's the last one. You've got a long rivalry with him, but a pretty good friendship, I think, as when we caught up with him last year here on the show, that I think everyone would have noticed. He's great friends with the guys at Hoop 7 as well, which is a nice fit. And more than anything, I'm amazed that whether it's the Phoenix or the Jack Jumpers haven't snapped him up for this season, but that's probably to our benefit because he's happy to now help us out.
And you'll probably see two sides of Gibbo. You'll see Gibbo not currently contracted as a player, but I dare say mid-season or when there's an injury, a team will snap him up. He's still looking fit. He's doing some coaching on the side. I saw him doing some work with Southeast Melbourne.
Yeah, he's been on their bench for all of their games at the Blitz so far.
I think it's only a matter of time before we see him back in a jersey, and I'll be over the moon for him. I can't believe he's not under contract right now. His leadership, his skill, his love for the game is still very much an NBL standard. And Tassie in particular, I think everyone just assumed that as a Tassie boy, new team coming in, he'll be the inaugural captain. And before you knew it, the roster was full and there was no A. Gibson. So we might ask him about interest he received in the off-season, where he's at now, and more importantly, what his plans are for the future, because I don't think his playing days are done in the league.
No, I don't either. And the last thing that we've got planned for this year, we'll be releasing our show separately, and we'll have the Tab Touch preview as a separate show each week. And I'll be joined by Matty Knight, and I'm delighted to be able to keep Matty involved in basketball. We had a lot of great fun last year, and not only will he give us insight into each round that's upcoming, but he'll be trying to point you in the right direction and give you some tips on potential multi-bets that him and Shawn will try to raise money for charity. It didn't work great last year, but let's hope that was just a trial run and they'll go better this year. But it's great to have Matty involved too, because your history with him is unbelievable. You went to college together, you played on that MU's team together, you played at West Sydney together, and then obviously you played over here with the Wildcats together. It's a remarkable history that you've got with him.
Yeah, some players you just know what to expect from them. You don't even have to talk. There's no communication whatsoever. You just kind of understand each other. And Matty was one of those guys, whether it was at the offensive end, the defensive end, and probably the most underestimated or underrated, defensive player that the league's ever seen. I rated him right up there with some of the best defenders in the 12, 13 years I was involved in the NBL, could move his feet, take charges. And he was one of the few centres I can remember that if you're in a pick and roll, you could switch with him going onto a point guard, and more often than not, you stayed in front of them. So hell of a defender, hell of a player, had a great career, and yeah, good to keep him involved with Shawnee, and big underline under try. Hopefully this season they actually can raise some money. So just let's see what they come up with, and hopefully we get some wins.
Now, all this wouldn't be possible without Tab Touch for bringing us that preview, but also Hoop 7. To me, it's the best basketball store in all of Australia. You head to Murray Street in the Perth City to check it out in person. If you can't get there, head to hoop7.com.au and they'll take care of you. So thank you to Jason and his team for supporting us once again. Your two little ones, Damo. Have you started decking them out in basketball gear yet?
Yeah, Maggie, we do our daily training. So we've got little basketball. She hasn't got the basketball shoes just yet, but once it starts, it doesn't stop. So I'm kind of delaying the start of it because she's one of those people that loves her shoes. Fortunately, right now, it's more wearing mum's size 10s or whatever Brit is, high heels. But she loves her basketball, so it's only a matter of time before we're down at Hoop 7. The 2 pairs of shoes I currently wear, I bought from Hoop 7. So it's a great shop down there. They're happy to help out. And if you're listening, how about a discount next time, fellas? Let's see what's going on. I'll keep plugging you if I can come in for a discount.
I can guarantee you Shawn gets one. So
if Shawn, that cuts to the core.
If Shawn gets one, surely Damo gets at least a 1% bigger. On
the discount. Theme of everything, can you just give me his discount? Let's see if I can cut him out of that.
There's no way Shawn would ever pay full price for anything, as we all know. Now, I promise we'll get to some basketball talk because the NBL season is getting close. But why don't you fill everyone in, Damo, on what you're up to right now and how many projects you have going all at once right now?
No, I once got told that if you're the smartest man in the room, you're in the wrong room. And I love that because with the Wildcats being how small Perth is, the network within it, I met a lot of CEOs, GMs, people that I admired with what they've achieved in their own business or academia or sport, music, so on and so forth. And so I've just started meeting with more and more of these people over time. And to be honest, 90% of it goes over my head, what they do and how they see the world. The 10% I understand, I really appreciate, and it motivates me. So I have got involved in a few random things. My bread and butter is real estate. So I'm a part owner of a real estate company here in Perth. But outside of that, I'm involved with the gold mine up in Kalgoorlie, a sports drink company called Everlast. So my corny mug is on the side of all these bottles, which makes...
not the most recent ones, though.
No, the vitamin waters, the sports drinks are coming out. So the isotonic ones... they're on that, but thank goodness they've decided to go with a more modern logo opposed to a guy who's now got grey hair and retired.
I got very excited. I sent you a picture when I was at a grand final party, and the drinks or water that they were handing out was all Everlast drinks with Damian Martin's face on it. That was just about the highlight of my day. I'm
sorry to hear that. You need to have better days. But involved in those things, and then a foundation called Global Roaming Pilbara Foundation. So they're the main things, and obviously proud husband and father to 2 little ones who keep you on the toes.
Yeah, you're a busy man. I'm proud to be doing this show with you. We've known each other for a long time now. Going back to 2009, we first met when you first got to Perth, and we had some interesting times together when I was working at the club, when I would see you every day and you'd have to say yes to the things I'd ask you to do. But it's been an honour to stay in touch with you ever since. And yeah, I'm proud to be doing this show with you. So thanks for being on board with me, first of all, and putting the faith in me. Now, we'll take a break in a second and come back with some basketball talk, but the biggest news of the off-season was the Boomers winning bronze at Tokyo. As a former Olympian yourself, and you went through the heartache of just missing out on bronze, what was the emotion like for you when you saw it happen?
It was incredible. It's built up now since the boys in the NBA went away, All-Star weekend. Normally with 82 regular season games, when you get that mid-season break, you just go on holidays unless you're involved in the weekend itself. And I think there's about 4 or 5 Australians. They got together in California and they decided the message that they're going to send out of that little get-together was next year at the Rio Olympics, it's gold. It's gold or bust type of thing. And it took a while, but then more and more people started to buy into it. the attitude became contagious. The work ethic was incredible. Being a part of the program, he just absolutely loved it. So to come so close in Rio, fast forward another 4 years, the amount of pressure guys like Joe Ingles and Paddy Mills put on themselves, Matthew Dellavedova, Aaron Baines, to be able to live up to it was amazing. The performances those boys put on, Paddy in particular, is just something for me. I know I'm biased, but I think it's the greatest bronze medal Australia's ever won at an Olympic campaign, regardless of what sport or individual track or field or may have been. So to be able to see the Boomers boys up there, as they're calling it, the rose gold around their neck, for me, I'm biased, like I said, but it's one of the greatest sporting moments I've been a part of as a spectator, and just over the moon for all of those guys involved, but in particular that older core group that's been through the highs and lows, and in particular that taste of bitterness that would have sat with them for the last 5 years, obviously with the Olympics getting delayed from Rio, and that fourth medal where Aaron Baines got called for the worst 2 fouls ever in the last minute to send Pau Gasol to the free throw line to keep Spain close, and then obviously came down to a couple of free throws on the buzzer with a foul on Paddy. So over the moon for him. Honestly, it was an incredible moment, grinning from ear to ear, hearing Andrew Gaze talk about it and tear up. That was almost as good as the moment itself. But that photo, which will be an iconic photo for the rest of Basketball Australia's lifespan, is Paddy and Joe embracing. And then obviously it's special to have Gorge a part of it, because he brought those 2 players into their first ever Olympic campaign going back, 4 Olympics ago. So just a lot of great stories out of it. And whenever I get to hear one of the players or coaches talk about it, you can't help but just feel over the moon for each one involved.
Fantastic. Okay, let's take a deep breath. When we come back, we'll take a look at how all the NBL teams are shaping up for this season. We'll get your predictions, and then we'll wrap up this first episode, Damo.
Beautiful.
Okay, back here on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle. That was a big first segment, Damo. We covered a lot. Let's take a...
Hope you're still tuned in, guys.
What do you made of the Blitz so far? Obviously, we've had one group of teams playing over in Tasmania, the other group playing, so far in Melbourne, and then they'll be hopefully still playing at least one game in Wollongong. The first game that was meant to be there this week between the Breakers and the Hawks has had to be cancelled thanks to the members of the Breakers touring party getting COVID. But, I mean, from the games you've been able to see so far, has anything sort of jumped out?
One, it's exciting that basketball is back in front of us for an NBL season. 2, it's a reminder that COVID is a huge part of the NBL and everyday life. And, as you just said, that game in Wollongong cancelled due to a COVID, not outbreak, but a positive testing.
And still being forced to play in front of no crowd in Melbourne too,
no
which has
crowd.
been tough, because when there's a crowd there, the full houses in Tasmania has been fantastic.
I was going to say, you get the extremes. You do get to see whenever the Jack Jumpers are playing. It's brilliant, the support they're getting already. I think it's going to be a huge season for them, and just build the sport across the state. And then, you tune into the games in Melbourne and it's a little bit more sombre, unfortunately. But right now, there's a few players, a few imports. This is the time of year where you get to see what the imports are like. Trying to predict our top 4, which we'll get to shortly, has been tough. I think I've changed it about 6 or 7 times so far.
It's tougher for imports than ever, because some of them still haven't even arrived in the country yet.
Yeah,
or are still in quarantine right now.
And you've got players getting judged by performance opposed to the reality that they spent 2 weeks in quarantine. Now, I don't know how individually motivated these guys are, or how disciplined they are, or how their body responds to windows not being allowed to open, only being able to pace up and down the size of a hotel room. So it's a tough one for imports right now. It's more so about style of play, a bit of chemistry, and come the regular season, all those imports will be good, and we'll see the best of them over the next first 4 or 5 rounds of the season.
Let's take a quick get your quick thoughts on each team. Let's start. We'll do it alphabetical order. Adelaide 36ers. Interesting, they've only brought back DJ, Isaac Humphries and Sunday Dett, so they've had a huge turnover. What ended up happening to Connor Henry was quite unbelievable, but I think the end result to have CJ Bruton as a head coach has turned out well, but I don't think anyone would have liked the way that it happened. But I'm really buoyant on their list. If Mitch McCarron was an unbelievable leader for Melbourne last year in their championship, I really like what we've seen of Dusty Hannahs so far. We haven't seen a lot of Todd Withers, but Tad Duffelmeyer, I think he'll be an important player. I think Mojave King will be better than he was last season. Kay Soto, even if it's just the eyeballs that he brings to the coverage, is going to be fantastic. I think Cam Bairstow's got a bit to prove. I think I think there's a lot to be excited about for Adelaide.
Yeah, well, for CJ, it was getting to the point where it's almost always a bridesmaid, never the bride.
And I spoke to him once he got the Adelaide job, and he said it as diplomatically as he could, but he was firstly really hurt from Brisbane because obviously Andre had been grooming him to take that job, and then the club decided to go in a different direction. And then he also went and interviewed for the Cairns job, but he said he felt as soon as he got there that they had already made the decision that he wasn't going to be the coach, so he was wasting his time. So he was actually pretty disheartened when there was no job available. Then all of a sudden, Jeff Van Groningen gave him the call, and the Adelaide job became available. And I think it's a good end result, but I do feel for Connor.
Yeah, no, how it was handled with Connor, I just was blown away to make him sit in quarantine for 2 weeks, take one photo with players on the court the next day.
Have one workout with Mojave King.
One workout. See you later. Look, I agree. I think it's a great pickup with CJ, albeit under unfortunate circumstances for Connor. But you're right. I can't remember in recent history where a team has only kept 3 players.
Yeah.
Like, that is just blowing my mind. Now, those 3 players are very, very good players. I mean, Isaac Humphries was on track, according to Shawn Redhage, to be an MVP of the league last year, and also defensive player at the start of the season.
And Sunday won your best defensive
Sunday
player
did win defensive player.
Yep.
So between Sunday, Mitch Norton, they were 2 of the standouts, and Daniel Johnson is the most consistent Adelaide 36 that they've had in a long time, an all-time great for the club. And
6 times he's been their club MVP.
Yeah, he just knows how to put the ball through the basket. He is incredible. It's funny that you go through some of the best players over the last decade. His name deserves to be in there, yet for whatever reason, he's barely represented Australia. So there might be more to that because he could have been in that Boomers jersey a long time.
Yeah.
But those ins that you read off. Now, obviously the big outs, Josh Giddey, there's no bigger than that. So with the exception of Josh Giddey going out, you look at who they brought in with Mitch McCarron in particular.
With Mitch, were you surprised that he firstly decided to leave Melbourne off a championship and chose Adelaide, who they haven't been a great club for a long time?
No, but he's going to be one of the it's going to be his show. He's going to run the point.
Yep.
Obviously, money talks. I dare say Adelaide, with only retaining 3 players, had a little bit to spend. Sure. Mitch, you pay import wages because he's as good as any other player in the league. And I think that between he and Sunday, they play both ends. Yeah. They play either side of the basketball, and that's going to be a fantastic backcourt.
I think the combination of him and Dusty Hanners is the one I'm really excited
But Dusty's
about.
the one that surprised me. I was going to say...
I don't know if they'll turn the ball over. They're both such great ball handlers and so composed with the ball.
Yeah, and it takes pressure off the other. Yep. When you've got 3 guys who can legitimately bring it over safely, regardless of what time of the game it is, it just means, okay, we can focus on what offenses we're going to run, opposed to can we just get over the backcourt. Yeah. And some teams take a shortcut and they go straight to scoring power, opposed to, hey, let's make sure we've legitimately got 19 seconds to run an offense, and these guys will have no problems getting to sets because of their basketball IQ and their skill. And then when they get into sets, they run 7 or 8 deep. You already talk about Duffermeyer. He's surprised me. He's been great. Mojave King, I think, is going to be out for a big season. I know he was upset, or more accounts, it sounded like there was a bit of frustration with playing minutes and so on and so forth last season, but they're all going to get an opportunity. And CJ Bruton's style of play so far has been fun to watch. Yeah. Everyone's going to get a bit of court time. And Cam Bairstow, he was an Olympian 5 years ago. Yeah. He's still a solid back to the basket type of player. And with guys like Mitch and Sunday coming off pick and rolls, he can still pick and pop or pick and roll. So, yeah, don't sleep on Bairstow. He's a hell of a player.
Yeah, we'll see how highly you rate Adelaide once we get to our predictions shortly. The Brisbane Bullets, they've also got a new coach, James Duncan replacing Andre Lamanis, but they brought back a lot of that group from last year. I'm most excited about seeing a fully fit Lamar Patterson this season, but Robert Franks, what we've seen so far, looks handy. Tom Digbo has looked really exciting.
Very good.
We haven't seen Isaiah Moss just yet, their other import. On paper, they look probably stronger than last season, and they were almost in the mix for finals last year. They weren't too far away. Yeah,
I think they'll be thereabouts again. I'm excited to see what year 2 for Wigness brings. Yep. They seem to be giving a bit of minutes there at the point guard position. Obviously, Nathan Sobey's going to have the ball in his hands predominantly the majority of the game, but like you already mentioned, Lamar Patterson, Jace Kadee already came out and said as a teammate that Lamar almost let himself down by maybe playing not in his best shape. He stuck around in Australia, played in the NBL 1, and he's back to that all-star 5, it seems at the moment already. You combine that with guys like Jace Kadee, a great role player, Anthony Drimmick, who can drop 20 on you if you're not focused, and then Sobey, who again will be an all-NBL player. Tanner Krebs can just flat out shoot the ball. So it's not like you can go and double these guys because you got a lot of shooters that are going to be spotted up on the 3-point line. So
and he's playing to get the direct jumpers to pay him a big contract for next year too.
Is that? Yeah. There we go. So no, I like who they've brought in, who they retained initially, and I love that they backed Lamar to come back bigger and better, but to come back an even better player, an even better player because he is a hell of a talent. And he's just so hard to guard because he's super strong. So you close out hard, and once you're on his hip, he just holds you on his hip, and he can get all the way to the ring. Close out short, boom, he can let it fly and knock down a 3. So I think he's going to have a massive season in the Bullets jersey, which just takes a lot of pressure off Sobey. Sobey doesn't have to drop 20 plus a game anymore because they've got a lot of firepower around them that I think are going to play better. The big outs, obviously, they didn't bring back BJ Johnson, that's okay. Harry Froling and Matt Hodgson, though, that's some solid big man who set those screens for those players, who get the extra possessions, kick it out to them. We'll see how they go. A lot of
pressure now on Harrison to be their main big man.
Yeah, exactly. And he's going to have to play huge minutes. Yeah. He looks like he's capable of doing it. I love the trust they've instilled in him already. And he seems to be responding with some quality minutes in the preseason.
Cairns Taipans. Don't have to quite be as diplomatic as we might have on my show with Alex Loughton. I'm concerned about the Taipans for this season. Now, they'll be well coached because I think we both agree that 40 is a great basketball mind, but I'm just not convinced they have the talent that I see on the other nine clubs. Steve Zimmerman's looked okay in pre-season so far at the Blitz as a big man, kind of one-dimensional, but he looks like someone that could average a double-double. I don't know if Taji McCall is going to be the dominant type of import that they perhaps needed. A lot of pressure on Scott Machado and probably Nate Jawai to be dominant for them to be competitive. Well,
you can already see the style of play with obviously a coaching change. Nate is a focal point again. Now, I'm biased, teammates with Nate, friends with Nate, but I think he's still a powerhouse big in this league. Now,
and there's still no one that can stop him.
No one. I mean, he was going against the Wildcats and was it Wildcats? Yeah, Hodgson.
Hodgson, yeah.
No, Hodgson's a big boy, 6'10", 6'11", big wingspan. But Nate, when he gets over that right shoulder, or go either side actually, he's just a big boy that can cause some damage down there. They just didn't seem to utilise him in Cairns over the previous season.
No, they didn't. Last year when he played, he had moments where he was unstoppable, but he just wasn't playing more than 15 minutes a game. Yeah, so
I think instead of having that pick and roll where you got Cam Oliver rolling to the basket where Nate would have been, so they did put him on the bench, instead you're going to see Nate on the block. 40's going to insist that they roll the ball into him. You can already see Scotty. There was an example during the preseason. Scott Machado kicks it to the wing. The wing player, I can't think of who it was, looked off Nate, and then Scott got the ball back and lobbed it into Nate and then ripped the teammate saying, if he's ever got a one-on-one situation down on the block and you can pass it to him, you give it to him. So I think Nate's going to be great. The big two for me is all dependent with how they go this year is the performances of Noi and Deng. I don't think we saw the best of them last season. They were injury plagued. They can flat out play. I think they're very, very good players. I think between them, we've probably got the most improved player of the season coming up. But they're a hell of a talent. And if you get Scotty at the point, Nate on the block, and some of those guys offering some firepower, I fear for their depth. But if you've got 5 or 6 guys performing on a consistent basis, they will get some wins this year. There's no doubt about that.
No, I've got a soft spot for them for obvious reasons. So I do hope they go well. The Illawarra Hawks, they had a great season last year. They weren't too far away from getting to the grand final and then final. And to me, I think they've improved on paper. I know Justin Simon was a great defender, but I think what we've seen so far from Rathan Mays and Cleveland, they'll be better offensively. Tyler Harvey might even be better second season around. Same for Justinian Jessup. I think there's a lot to like about their potential.
No, I agree. I think these guys are going to be one of the powerhouses this season. You'll hear that a little bit more when we're doing our predictions. Look, I think Jessup's the one that's really going to benefit from a year two coming out of college. You saw parts and glimpses of what he's capable of. I think that's going to be more consistent this season. Tyler Harvey's one of the best players in the league, one of my favourite players to watch. The big in for them this season is Reith. Duop coming in, pick and pop for threes, roll to the basket. Yeah, I think he's going to be one of the premium big men in the league. And for a team that already made semi-final basketball last year, to come back in what I believe is better. I loved watching some of the players they have released, but I think they've gone out and actually recruited even better. In particular, bringing in Harry Froling, who under Gorge, I believe, will kind of the kick up the butt he might have needed.
Yep.
He's got his brother on the team, a new coach, a fresh start. He's going to have a little bit more opportunity out there, and Duop as well. Just those two guys in particular, I think, were huge ins for them.
Absolutely. Melbourne United, the defending champions. Now they got some huge outs. Mitch McCarron and Jock Landale speak for themselves, but Uday Bubba was very handy. Sam McDaniel started on their championship-winning team, and Scotty Hobson was obviously important as an import. The ins are going to be fascinating. I can't wait to see what Matty Dellavedova can do in the NBL. I think based on what we've seen in the Blitz, he looks hungry. I don't think you can judge him on the points he scores, but the impact he has could be pretty significant. So I still think he might be handy. Brad Newley looks like he's got plenty left in the tank. We've only seen Ariel Hugporty once, but he almost brought the backboard down with the dunk that he threw down. I think Joe Luala-Chul is going to benefit from more minutes. What do you think of the reigning champs?
No, I think it's Jack White. Like, I know he's returning, but he was having a fantastic rookie season. And then obviously he gets injured. We don't see him for the rest of the season. I think even though they're the reigning champs and they've lost some big names, you know, as you mentioned, McCarron, Landau, Hobson, Bubba, McDaniel, Anderson. And with Uday and Sam McDaniel, they're the players they could throw on the opposition's best player. So that will be sorely missed. But they brought in Matthew Dellavedova, who is an incredible defender, one of the most competitive people you'll ever meet, but does have the highest basketball IQ of probably anyone I've ever played alongside. So he's going to be great on the court, but what he's going to do is he's going to make someone like JLA his life so much easier on the court, because he'll be able to dictate where you should be at what time, and I'll get you the ball. Jack White, another high basketball IQ type of player, you know, former captain of Duke University. He's going to love playing alongside Dellavedova. Delhi will demand the utmost of professionalism and an elite approach to a day-to-day basis. And his approach to the game itself is going to be contagious. So that culture of the club, they already won a championship. You got guys returning like Chris Goulding, who's still going to be incredible. Shea Illy, who can still pick up full court and cause headaches. But that culture of the club is going to go from great to even better with Dellavedova simply being there on a day-to-day basis, and his energy, his professionalism, his basketball IQ being contagious. So, yeah, I think Melbourne are going to be there. Again, huge outs, but one massive in Dellavedova, and then someone, Brad Newley. I mean, he looks fitter than I've seen him in a number of years. So he looks great. He knows how to score. He knows how to win. And whatever opportunity gets given, playing behind guys like Chris Goulding, he's going to make the most of. But JLA, massive season. Jack White, even bigger.
What an off-season for the New Zealand Breakers. We hope things might calm down for them a little bit once they got to head back home. But the Webster brothers both asked for their release, which I think threw a big spanner in the works. So, I mean, I think they've ended up with a pretty talented roster. Jeremiah Martin especially looks like he can really score.
Great pickup.
Their two Frenchmen, Osmain Ding and Hugo Besson, have looked good so far at the Blitz. Yanni Wetzel will be a really good pickup as well, but unfortunately for them, they're going to fight a lot of adversity, and it's all about keeping their head above water if they can before they get to go home.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing. They spent pretty much all of last season on the road, essentially. Now you got to back it up, and you're going to miss just being there for little things, sleeping in your own bed, being able to cook your own meals. It just adds up over time.
And now they've already got a COVID scare.
Yeah, got a COVID
out from the
scare.
season.
So, look, Ty and Corey, Corey got to play a lot of basketball against. Incredible play, incredible scorer, and was the heart of, a big part of, New Zealand for such a long time. Abercrombie injured. Now, he's the heart of the club. So, him being out really hurts. There's probably better balance now, I think, on the team. I think McDowell White will be able to run it. Jeremiah, I love what we've seen so far of him. But there's probably a better balance insofar as it's almost like they're saying, Finn, this is your team now. Yep. You, as our local player, combine that with our imports, we'll build around that. Whereas last year, because they had so much scoring power on paper, there probably was a bit too much standing and watching.
I don't know if there was great chemistry. The Webster brothers did their own thing when they're out there. Patterson never fit in, then they try to make changes along the way.
So I think it's, better balance this year, but nothing can take away from the fact that they're playing probably a whole season on the road, and that builds up over time. But credit to them because they put a good roster on paper, albeit missing the two Webster boys. They certainly would have planned being out there, and they are great talents.
The Perth Wildcats. I think on paper their roster looks stronger this year. I think they overachieved last season in a lot of ways and got the absolute best out of themselves. And who knows if Bryce was fit for the finals, they might have won a championship. But they've been able to add Vic Law, who was an MVP level player in the first half of last season before he got hurt at Brisbane. And we haven't seen the best of Michael Fraser yet at the Blitz, but his potential alongside Bryce, I think, is really exciting what they could do together. Matty Hodgson and Majuk will be very, very nice as a combination in the 5 spot. But really, a fully fit Bryce Cotton automatically makes them a contender, I think.
Yeah, I think this is one of the best teams the Wildcats have put together in a long time, not just compared to last season, but in a long time. Look, Luke Travers is going to continue to emerge. The biggest thing for them is Mitch Norton's out injured for a while. Todd Blanchfield is out injured for a while. They literally met their head coach for the first time in person, 10 days ago. Yep. So I think we saw that lack of, not necessarily chemistry, but there's too much thinking out there in the first 2 preseason games, because a lot of those guys have come from a system where you're going to sprint to the 45, you're going to cut off a flex cut, there's going to be pin downs, there's going to be staggers. So you know that if you don't score in the first 4 to 6 seconds, you're probably not scoring for another 10 seconds because that offense will dictate the movement of the ball. Whereas now it's going to be more free-flowing, it's going to be better spaced, a lot more on balls, a lot more backing players to make one-on-one plays and keep the spacing. So if you get by your player, you're hopefully getting the head on the ring or a lob to a Majuk or Hodgson. So it's going to be exciting to watch, provided the ball continues to move. Otherwise, defenses are going to load up. Offensive scoring power, that's as good as it gets. They are... Yeah, they run deep, and once they get a fully fit Todd Blanchfield and Mitch Norton back, Nordo will just pick you apart. If it's isolation basketball, he'll get on the ring. Toddy Blanchfield. Todd's the one I have a question mark over because he was incredible last season, one of the best players in the league, and when Bryce went out injured, his game went to another level again. But a lot of that did come off pin downs, staggers, flex cuts, so he could curl cut if you trailed him, he'd stop and pop if you went under the screen, and he delivered. Whereas now, you haven't seen a whole lot under Scott Morrison's system in regards to specific plays for players. But I think Todd will be best suited if they continue to run those staggers, continue to run those pin downs, and back him to make good reads accordingly. So I'm excited with what they've put together on paper. Not being able to have a full team or with a coach for the whole of pre-season or the whole of the off-season, it's probably mean they're going to be delayed. And when you're delayed in getting to full strength, that can cost you 3 or 4 games. And the reality is the Wildcats, that would mean 3 or 4 home games. And after that first 5 initial games they play at home to begin the season, who knows with COVID whether they ever get to come back. So it'll be an interesting year for them, but fully fit under normal circumstances. That's a championship team right there.
Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, they at a halftime in Game 3 of the semi-finals last year, they were on track for a grand final appearance. So they weren't far away, but they've got some huge outs. Yanni Wetzel was a great 5-man for them last year. Kiefer Sykes at times was capable of being the best player in the league with what he did last year at both ends of the floor. Defender, Ben Moore was handy as well. So they're significant outs. So a lot's going to depend on how good their imports are, Xavier Munford and Devon Thomas. The big Chinese fellow though, Joe Chi, he's looking pretty exciting too. And I love the story that Dane Pinot told me. The first day that Dane got out there on training, he tried to make a move down the block and on Joe Chi, and he got it blocked with his elbow. Dane's almost a 7-footer, so we're going to see some exciting plays. Obviously, Glidden back is handy. Adman, the new captain. Mitch Creek. Ryan Brokoff looks like he's ready to have a much bigger impact. What do you think of them?
Yeah, I think you're going to see a better Southeast Melbourne team. And as you mentioned, they were close to being grand finalists last year. I think Brokoff is the huge one. And I think Mitch Creek is still an all-NBL player. So I think you're going to see a better season from him. Obviously, he had a disrupted season last year. Fully fit on the court for every single game. Mitch Creek's going to have a better year overall. Cam Glidden was hampered by injuries. You see him spotted up. I love that Kyle Adnam, the amount of faith they've instilled in him by voting him as captain. He'll run the show out there and be another scoring punch. Yeah, but it all comes down to Brokoff. I still rate him as a Boomers type of quality player, one of the flat-out shooters in the league. And with being 6'7", that high technique where he starts the ball, you just don't block him, to be honest. So I think Brokoff is the one that's going to go from X to Z. And he's going to turn some eyes and just cause some headaches for teams, because if you focus too much on some of those before mentioned players like Glidden, Adnam and Creek, you're going to get hurt by Brokoff, and he'll drop 6 from 6 from behind the perimeter, play defense, rebound, and have 0 turnovers. He's just a player that will play 35 plus minutes and put together some nice numbers over the course of the season.
Sydney Kings. They've had a fair few changes as well. Obviously, a new coach with Chase Buford coming in. No Casper Ware is probably the biggest one.
Nowhere in the NBL. It's been a while.
It has. Craig Moller, I think, was underrated what he did as well. The less we say about Didi Lazard right now, probably the better. But again, they're 2 new imports, Jalen Adams and RJ Hunter. Look like they'll be, difference makers. We hope DJ Vasiljevic gets back. Last time I spoke to him, he was hoping late December, so sort of within the first 4 rounds, he's hoping to get back on the court. So he gives them another scoring punch. Great to see Angus Glover back on the floor, but looking so healthy as well. They look pretty good to me.
They do. I love who they've brought in. I think they've recruited really well, really well, to be honest. Look, DJ and Angus, I'm over the moon for both of them. Hopefully DJ comes back fully fit. I thought he was having an incredible rookie season. And then Angus Glover, I mean, is it 3 now? Knees, 3 ACLs. Yeah. He's just a hell of a talent. Now, he was a guy that went over for the Nike Hoop Summit. He was one of the best players for his age group in the world, not just in Australia, but in the world. 3 ACLs later, and to see what he's doing, 20-plus point game for Sydney in the preseason already. Great lefty, still looks as athletic as ever, and the mental toughness and the resilience he's shown not to quit, move on to something else. That's 3 years of basketball he's missed out of the last 4, essentially, or 3.5. So I'm over the moon that he's back on court. I think he's going to have a fantastic season for them, and I'll be his biggest supporter in the stands or at home on my couch every time he puts the ball through the hoop or makes a defensive stop. He's a great player, great kid, and it's just good to see him back.
Now, if you try to go to interview DJ at halftime in one of the games in Perth, I think he'll be happy to see you, because he was pretty outspoken a few weeks ago when I spoke to him about the disrespect that he felt from everybody coming into last season who wasn't talking about him as a Rookie of the Year candidate, and everyone was talking about Josh Giddey and Mojave King. But he singled out you and he singled out Shawn Redhage as the 2 people that did give him credit. You both picked him for your Rookie of the Year coming into last season, so he'd be very happy to see
I tell you what, he may have won it as well.
I think if he stayed healthy, he could have.
So, look, what a rookie class, though. Just quickly, Mojave, DJ, obviously Giddey won it, and then we've got what? Melbourne.
Wetzel, Jack White.
Wetzel, it's probably the best rookie season in the last 10 years. So, no, he is a huge part of who Sydney will be going forward once he's back out there on the court. And the fact that they were running pin downs, they're running kickbacks, they're running all types of offenses for him, for a rookie, that's huge. Yeah. And just consistently that he was their go-to man. Now, I also think we're going to see a better season out of Martin. Yep. I think he will be, possibly the best big man in the league this season. And we saw glimpses of it, but I think they're just going to utilise those 2 players in particular. Xavier Cooks, I think, is going to have his best season to date. He's just kind of that glue guy, but I think he's going to be more of a double-double on average, opposed to a couple of good games here, a couple of quiet ones there. He will be Mr. Double-Double. Yep,
totally agree. Just finally, what are your thoughts on the roster that the Tasmania Jack Jumpers have put together, and what do you make of what you've seen of them so far?
Oh, look, what I've seen is an exciting new club that's creating a lot of love and passion in a state that hasn't had professional sport for a long time. So, look, it can't be easy to put together a completely new roster. Like any team in the NBL, a lot of success comes down to the imports, especially when you're allowed to have 3 imports. They've got some great Australian players or local players out there. Jared Weeks, I thought, was a great pickup. Clint Steindel, the inaugural captain of the Jack Jumpers, I was over the moon to see that, and he's still a guy of dropping a lot of points from behind the arc. Jack McVeigh, who we didn't even mention earlier, he's just an exciting player. He loves the game. It's contagious. He's probably one of those guys that if you call him a teammate, you just love having him as a teammate. And so I think he's going to be a fan favourite. And the best is yet to come for Will Magnay in the league. He looks fit. He looks healthy. He sounds confident. They've got a great coaching staff over there. They're exciting. It's always a lot of pressure, though. I mean, Southeast did it in their 2nd season to make postseason play, I believe it was. But any new club, to expect postseason basketball is a huge ask. A lot of it will come down to the imports, but they've certainly got quality Australians playing alongside them.
Scott Roth is the head coach, but I want to ask you about Mark Redford. He was an assistant coach when you first came over here to Perth, and was he in Sydney with you too, with Bevo?
No, he was over here with us.
He was already here with Connor and Scott Fisher before that, but great to see him back in the league because he's been doing a lot of great work in Tasmania over the last few years.
He left the Wildcats, went to Adelaide to assist Marty Clark, who's one of his lifelong friends, another guy out of Tasmania, Marty from Penguin. But behind the scenes from the NBL, he's just been gung-ho about Tasmania basketball. Very passionate guy. He will get the utmost out of his players because he demands that. And so once training's done and Scott goes 1, 2, 3, they say, Jack Jumpers, you better believe the day's not done. He will pull aside a couple of the players, work with them for another 30 to 45 minutes. He was great for my development in my first year at the Wildcats. He was sadly missed when he did decide to go to Adelaide, but it's great to see him back in the NBL. And I think Scott will love having his passion and his fire. And then obviously they've gone out and recruited a great team that will be coachable, and that's fantastic.
I think Bevo and Mark have mended their bridges since, but we might be able to ask Bevo on one of the shows this year about the circumstances behind Rat leaving the Wildcats, because it was certainly interesting.
Not expected from Bevo's end. Win a championship and lose an assistant, he wasn't expecting it, unless you lose them and they get a head coaching role, but it wasn't to be.
Well, he might have already been doing some of the negotiations for the next season too.
You might know more than I do, so we would definitely ask Bevo.
I'll let Bevo tell that story if he wants to at some point this season. Damo, that was a lot to digest. Let's take a breath. We'll come back, get your predictions, and then we'll wrap up this show on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle. Okay, Damo, back on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle. We'll run through this quickly because I hope people are still tuning in. Let's hope we're not just talking to ourselves by this point. Let's get your predictions. The season's only a week away. Let's start at the bottom. This might depend a lot on who you end up putting in your top 4 or picking as champions, but who have you got for your Coach of the Year?
Oh, Coach of the Year. We're just going to go straight with it. I think that the Hawks... Well, no, they did well last year. Look, I'm going to go with Gorge this year. Obviously, Trev won it last year. I think Melbourne are going to be up there again, and it's tough to win Coach of the Year when you're the reigning champs. But, yeah, I'm going to go with the Hawks. I just think they're going to be, well, we'll hear where I predict they're going to finish, and under the guidance of Gorge, you're going to see some great basketball, and he'll get the nod.
I hate to be boring, but I had Gorge penciled in as well. Now, you might have given away your thoughts on this one a little bit earlier. Most improved player.
Yeah, there's 3. There is 3. So obviously I better choose one of them in particular. Look, I mentioned that Noi and Dang, Majok Dang, I just think one of them out of Cairns is going to get it. Saw glimpses of it. There was a few injuries. Mojave King's the other one. I think he's going to be fantastic. Will Magnay I mentioned earlier. But if I had to go one out of those 4, I'm going to lock in Noi.
I think he was really missed when he went down last year as well, as was Mujuk Deng. It's a tough one because we don't know who, but do you reckon Angus Glover counts as a candidate?
Oh, well, initially I thought of him, and I thought, is there a certain amount of games you've got to play the prior season? Look, it's our show. We can lock in whoever we want. Yeah, if the NBL comes out and says he didn't qualify, then I'll let you have a second guess.
No, I might go with Angus just because he's such a great story. Best defensive player. I'd be amazed if you can look past Sunday Detch.
Yeah, well, I'll prepare to be amazed. Okay. Look, Sunday's going to be up there. It's what he does. He's the type of guy that will be one of the fittest players in the league again. He will pick up full court every possession again. Great wingspan, high basketball IQ, reads the play well. So Sunday's going to be up there. I think Jack White though.
Okay.
I think Jack White can guard 1 through 4. I think he's going to play big minutes for Melbourne. And maybe it's just because I didn't want to go with the obvious. And the only reason I'm not saying Nordo is because he's out injured to start the season. So Mitch Norton, Sunday Detch, Jack White are my top 3 going forward. But I'll give the nod to White just because I liked what I saw pre-injury last season.
Sure. I'm going to stick with Sunday. We talked about the Rookie of the Year class from last year and how strong it was. I don't know if there's too many rookies right now. So rather than pick our Rookie of the Year, what if we go with who we think will be the best next star?
Oh, we'll rattle off a few so our listeners know who we're talking about.
Okay, so Mojave King still qualifies.
Yep.
Justinian Jessup still qualifies. Let me see. Ariel Hukporti is another one at Melbourne.
It is a smaller group, isn't it?
Is Osman potentially one?
Look, I think Jessup, without even having to read out everyone else, I do think it is Jessup. I just think that Illawarra are going to run more sets for him. He's going to have the ball in his hands a little bit more. And the amount of attention that Harvey's going to get in year 2 and Duop's going to open him up with some on-ball screens. I just think we're going to see a big season from Jessup and give him the nod.
It's tough to argue, but based on what I've seen so far, Huck Porty will be up there. But I think potentially if we're talking best next star, so it's not technically the Rookie of the Year, then I think Mojave King potentially as well, if he's given enough minutes, which I believe might be written into his contract when he went to Adelaide to make sure he does get enough minutes.
I need to get a hold of that contract. That'll be fun to see.
Now, before we get to the MVP, who do you think will be the leading scorer?
Well, I mean, in years gone by, it's been Bryce. But you look at the roster they've put together this season, and they're not as dependent on Bryce to drop 20 plus a game for them to be successful. So he'll be right up there just because he's the greatest player in the league and the best player we've seen in a long time. But I think this year, in particular with Vic Law there's just going to be less he has to do. So for the first time in a while, I don't know if he will be the leading scorer of the league. Look, I think Harvey will. Even though I mentioned Jessup before, I think Harvey's still going to be relied on to go for 20 plus, and they're going to run just so much for him. So he's going to have that green light. Guys like Chris Goulding, they have to score usually off their own bat. Off a pin down, they don't always have the ball in their hand. So there's a lot of great scorers in the league, but when you're a point guard scorer, you can kind of decide to an extent how often you're going to get shots up. And I think we're going to see Harvey, put himself in scoring positions.
I was going to say Harvey, but I'm going to go with Joe Lualachul just because we saw him put up 37 in his first game with the Blitz, and he's going to have a green light to shoot whenever he wants, and he's going to be a starter. He's going to be playing the Jock Landale role from last year, and provided he's not double teamed like Jock was, then I think he's going to be getting 20 shots a game, and he's a pretty good shooter. I think
you're going to see him in a first, second, or third team All NBL. We've kind of not mentioned him as much as we should have probably during the show because of how good the Melbourne United team are already. But you're right, he's just a flat-out scorer. The second he's got the ball, there's a good chance it's going up, and there's an even better chance it's going in. So, he just knows how to score quickly, and score in a number of ways. And with his height, his shooting ability, he's a tough matchup for anybody in the league. I know that last year he got dragged a few times because he didn't play the other end, where he made a few mistakes. It'll be interesting to see whether his lead is that short again, or whether he's given a little bit more rain and he can go out there and just flat-out play.
The only problem is this year that Dan Vickerman doesn't have Jock Landale to go back to, so maybe he does have a bit more of a leash.
Exactly right, and as I mentioned earlier, Jack White, Jack will take on the defensive assignment. So JLA, who can focus on putting the ball through the basket.
Okay, your MVP.
It's going to be a tough one because of how it's voted. I still think you're going to see Bryce get MVP, even if it's not the leading scorer of the league. And that's because it's voted for by captains, a few in the media, and they can understand the overall impact of a player. When it's game-by-game basis, sometimes you just get sick of choosing the same person. Or sometimes someone who normally averages 12 goes for 18, so you give them the 3 votes.
And the problem with that voting is you can be a standout on a poor team and end up being the MVP.
Exactly right. And I can't remember who I heard this from, but years ago someone said an MVP should never come from a player outside of the top 4. And to an extent, I do believe that. It's always
been Shawn's philosophy.
Oh, is that right? Please don't tell me I've quoted Redhage. But no, I do. I agree with Shawnee on that, and that's why I prefer this style of voting opposed to how it's been in years gone by. And I think Bryce is going to be the best player still in the league. And it's amazing to think I say that. He's still probably got his best basketball ahead of him because he's in that bracket of age group that you play your premium basketball. And now he's surrounded by more scorers, which means he can pick and choose when he wants to go off the dribble or pull up.
It's hard to go past Bryce. The only other one I'll chuck in there is Lamar Patterson. Yeah. If he's as motivated and healthy as he says he is and he looks like he is, then he's the only one that I think could really challenge him. Who are your top 4 teams?
Top 4, and like I said at the start of the show, I reckon I've changed it 6 or 7 times. So I'm going to go with Perth. I know I'm biased, but I just think the roster they've put together.
But I'm the same. I can never pick a top 4 without the Wildcats until I actually live to see them not make a playoffs.
Exactly right. I've got Illawarra in second, and then I close out with Melbourne. And even though I think Southeast are better this year than they were last, I also think Sydney are better this year than last year. And I think Sydney might just squeeze Southeast out of the top 4. We've spoken about the other teams. It's just a great league. You throw a blanket over them 1 through 10, but that's my top 4. And I'm happy to be wrong. I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with it, but we'll soon find out.
It's tough. 6 have to miss out. That's just the way it is. But I think Sydney, I think Adelaide.
Yeah.
I think Perth, just like I said, until they miss it, I'm never going to believe that they can miss it. And I think Illawarra will be the 4th. Out of that 4, which 2 make the grand final?
Yeah, I'm going with Illawarra Perth. I think it's going to be a replay of last season's semi-final, but at the different level. I just think by the postseason, going into postseason, if both rosters are fully healthy, they're just going to be hard to beat. Melbourne, great team. Southeast, great team. Sydney, great teams. But I just think those two just have that little bit of X factor. Perth, bitter that they lost last season, come back healthy. Illawarra probably let themselves down in the semi-finals. They probably should have beat that Perth team with all those injuries, but they're coming back, a better roster, second year of coaching under Gorge, and probably even more exciting.
Yeah. Just to mix it up, I'll go Sydney and Adelaide as my as top 2, and I would think the Kings might pip them in a 5-game series, but it's a long way away, Damo. Just like this has been a long episode of Hoop 7's
I won't ramble as
hustle.
much next time.
There's a lot to cover, so I hope you all enjoyed us breaking down how the NBL teams are looking, because all of a sudden, when we're back next week, round 1 is only days away, and we're going to catch up with the scoring machine and give him a right of reply to some of the things we've said on the show this week. So we'll hear from Shawn Redhage next week. Thanks to Hoop 7 for making this possible. Stay tuned for the Tab Touch preview next week as well, when I catch up with Matty Knight. But for now, this first episode of Season 3, I'm Chris Pike, and I'll sign off and leave you with some wise words from Damian Martin to sign off with.
Oh, he's put me on the spot here. Trust me, they won't be wise. No, it's just exciting to be part of the show for the upcoming season. I love the game. I love being a part of the NBL. I'll be courtside doing some commentary, so feel free to throw in some advice or things you want me to ask players and coaches when I've got them courtside at halftime, and I'll try and adhere to what our listeners want.